Hello, all you fellow nurses who are thinking about starting travel nursing. I'm Nicole. I'm the travel nurse Nicole who started this YouTube channel just so I could talk about travel nursing as a whole and hopefully answer people's questions. And I'm not a professional by any means. I started traveling a year ago. My husband, 3 children, and dog, we travel in my RV, and we have been to 3 different travel assignments. We are about to start our 4th travel assignment, and that is because we did 6 months in Texas, which was a double assignment or like a renewal of an assignment. So that one was half the year, and then my first assignment was in Florida, second one was in Montana, and then I went to Texas. I have been with just one travel company so far, and as I make these videos for you, I'm going to go into detail as to how I'm staying with my company or why I'm staying with my company, and also ways to get the wage you want by using other companies to help you along the way. So that being said, let's get started, and I will begin with what it takes to get started in travel nursing. So the very first thing that you need is, I guess, I am specialized in operating room, and specifically I'm specialized in the CVOR. Typically what they want is a travel nurse who has at least 2 years experience in your specialty. So if you're a brand new nurse thinking about travel nursing, I would start looking at what specialties pay the most or what you're most interested in and go with that. You need 2 years experience before you even start, so it doesn't pay to do something that you're not interested in, because there's a lot of positives with travel nursing and there's also a lot of negatives with travel nursing, and you want to make sure you love what you're doing. That being said, let's talk about what it takes to get started with travel nursing. Like I said, 2 years experience. Okay, you hit your 2-year mark and you're like, I want to start traveling. What do I have to do? First of all, I want you to be aware that when you start, you have to fill out so much paperwork, so many forms, so many things where you feel like maybe you just gave your identity to another human or another few humans, because like me, I applied with multiple companies for multiple positions just to get started. When I got started, it was April of 2020. Now, who remembers what happened around March and April of 2020? Everybody, the whole world knows what happens, okay? So luckily, I was in a position where I was able to get my first traveling assignment, and I was able to keep it for a 13-week contract. That was not the case for many people in April of 2020. Elective surgery started getting canceled, so a lot of hospitals were limiting their staff as well, which means they didn't need travelers anymore. So that was like probably the most horrible time to start being a travel nurse, but also it was the best time to become a travel nurse, because I honestly feel like my life didn't change that much, even though it was changing drastically by the second. I'll go into more detail on that one maybe in another video, but I want to get back to what it takes to get started, because I keep going off track. First of all, you're going to fill out paperwork. They're going to want you to take a picture of the front and back of your social security card, front and back of your driver's license, possible birth certificate, but I don't remember. They want a picture sent to them of your nursing license, and you're also going to have vaccination records. And if you can't prove certain vaccinations, then they're going to want you to go get blood drawn after you get an assignment at a hospital. They also want you to fill out a questionnaire to show how comfortable you are with certain scenarios. Specifically for the OR, they wanted me to fill out how comfortable I was doing ortho surgeries, or how comfortable I was doing lung surgeries, or whatever. You had to do, it's called a prophecy exam, and most hospitals require a prophecy exam to be taken, and that just tells the hospital where they can put you if your specialty doesn't need you that day. And that brings me to the actual contract at the hospital. Some contracts will tell you that they can float you to other areas. And since I'm an OR nurse, I don't do a lot of floor nursing. I have never done floor nursing other than a few months at a nursing home. So if somebody put me, I was a CNA, so I know how the floor works, but if somebody were to put me in a setting where I had to be a nurse on the floor, I don't think that's a very smart idea. I don't think that's within my scope anymore. I know that I should be able to adapt and overcome, and maybe I would be able to, but it just wouldn't be smart. I think I might hurt somebody, not on purpose, but like, think about all the things a floor nurse has to know that like, and they don't know everything that I do, and I don't know that everything that they do. So I think keeping people within their specialty is quite important, but contracts might say that you have to float. And when you're in the OR and you're working in the CVOR specifically, and it says that they can float you, typically that just means they can float you over to the general OR. So no big deal. It might be 1 day or 3 days or 10 days out of your contract. You might have to float, and that's okay, as long as it's safe. And that's just one thing that you should always look at in your contract is, can they float you? So let's say that you're onboarded with your company now. One thing I didn't mention also, so besides the prophecy testing, some companies will also have you take a automatic interview, like a verbal interview. It's kind of strange, but one company emailed me the 4 questions that they were going to ask me in this interview, and basically it's a recording. You hit start when you're ready to record your answer, and then you hit stop when you're ready to save that answer. And I think you can re-record it a few times, but to help prepare me, the company sent me the questions ahead of time, and it was like, tell me about a challenge you faced, tell me about, there was like 4 interview questions. Certain hospitals want that, so the company that one of the 3 companies that I had originally applied with to start looking at assignments with, one of them just did it for everybody. They had us, it didn't matter if the hospital was requesting it or not. So they kept that on file for a year or maybe longer. I'm not sure, because I don't think I ended up using that company. Anyway, that's one thing that they will have you do. Also, once you get a contract with the hospital, okay, so let's rewind. You're going to start applying to different hospitals with your company or with multiple companies. And then hospitals are going to call you. My very first assignment, only one hospital called me, and I had applied to like 30, which tells you they were stopping elective surgeries. And I was still applying because I'm like, I'm going to be traveling. So anyway, multiple companies or multiple hospitals will call you. Typically, it's the manager of the department that you're going to be working in, and they will specifically tell you about the position. My first interview, they didn't really ask me any questions at all. It was just like, this is the position, this is how much call you're going to take, and this is the hours, and when can you start? Do you need any time off during your interview? Things like that. Some companies will actually, when you apply to different hospitals, they will submit with your application what time you are requesting off during your 3-month period. Typically, it's a 13-week, 3-month period at an assignment. So that will all be discussed in the interview. And if you have a good recruiter, they will tell you to ask questions. And I would say, like, your interview process as a traveler, they already know that you know what you're doing. They don't need to ask you questions like, what's your greatest fear? Or, like, what obstacles do you need to overcome? Like, I'll just keep using that example in an interview. But hospitals expect that you know what you're doing, and they are just going to tell you, this is the position. Do you think that you're going to accept or not? And the reason they ask you that question is because they interview one person at a time. And if you don't answer your phone, by the way, they are going to go to the next person and interview that person. So answer your phone. If you've applied for a position in Boca Raton, Florida, answer your phone if you have a call coming in from Boca Raton, Florida. Even if you're in the middle of surgery, trust me, I've had to do it. And it's, people understand that you're applying for other jobs while you're working there because you are a traveler. That's what you're doing. So that being said, when they interview you, they're just going to tell you this is the position and do you accept? What you want to say at that point is, I need time to think about it. Can I take a couple minutes? Or you do have 24 hours, I believe, to respond to the offer. So what you can say is, send me the offer and I will look over it and make sure everything sounds good. And then basically you go with your recruiter and you either, in an email, you accept the offer or you decline the offer in the email. So I like to tell the manager, it sounds really good, but I do have to think it over. I can, as soon as I get an offer from your hospital, I'll definitely respond. This gives you just like a few minutes after your interview to like jump up and down because you're so excited. Or it gives you a few minutes to go, ugh, do I really want to do that? I didn't realize. I just need a little time to think about it. And that's okay to think about if you want to take a position or not. I mean, think about it, like, you're going to move somewhere around the United States for at least 3 months. You're moving to that place, and you want to be sure that that's the place you want to be for 3 months. And yes, you could probably do anything for 13 weeks. You really could. But do you want to be in a position where you hate life for 13 weeks? It could either feel like a really short contract or it could feel like a really long contract, depending on, you know, how great it is or how horrible it is. So just, you have to really think about it. And I know it's exciting because you got your first interview, but like, really think about, is this where I want to be? And if it is, great. Lucky you. That's amazing. And if it's not, tell them that you'll think about it, but you're kind of leaning on the side of not. Or you can be honest and just say, I really thought it was going to be more of A, and you're telling me it's more like B, so I think I'm probably going to have to pass. And don't panic. You will get another interview. Trust me, there is more interviews to be had. That kind of brings me to my next point, and I feel like I'm rambling on a lot, but this is my very first video on travel nursing, and I want to be very thorough. That brings me to the point of, don't panic. Your recruiter is going to say a month before you want to be at your first assignment, it's kind of early to apply. Hospitals are looking for people to start within 2 weeks. That's scary for anyone. I would like to be able to plan where I'm going to live. What am I going to drive? How am I going to get there? How far away from that area is the hospital that I'm going to be working at? I would like to be able to plan out transportation. I think I already said that. I would like to be able to plan out my entire life before I go to a place. But guess what? You don't get to do that when you're a travel nurse. It's crazy. It is insane. And a lot of these hospitals actually know they need somebody way before they're trying to hire somebody. I don't get it. It all has to do with, well, we haven't lost our traveler yet, and we know they're leaving on the 13th, but we can't go get approval until they're officially done. So then they have to wait 2 weeks without a traveler, and think about it. That's other people that are having to fill in that position, and they are struggling. By the time the traveler gets there, man, these people are burnt out. So anyway, I just think it's insane, but I'm telling you right now, don't panic when your recruiter tells you they're not quite ready for an applicant yet for March 17th when it's February 17th. You have to, and some places do hire that early and you could start applying, but typically what happens is if you tell them that that you don't want to start till March 17th, I'm just using this as an example, they are going to be like, oh, apply again in 2 weeks. If we haven't hired anybody yet, then we'll look at you. So they really want somebody who's ready to be there within the next 2 weeks, which, let me tell you, it is stressful. It is nearly impossible. unless you are ready to move. So typically what happens when you are getting ready to start a travel assignment, the hospital then, so you've already filled out a bunch of paperwork with your recruiter, right? And with the companies that you all applied with. Now, let's say you took an interview and you really want to accept this job. So you hit I accept in the email and you look over the contract and you make sure everything lines up, the contract lines up with what was said in your interview. That's really important because if they say, oh, so if there's 10 nights a month of call in your interview and then in your contract that says 20 nights a month of call, you're going to be like, wait a minute, this isn't right. And then you talk to your recruiter who will then fix it with the hospital. You do not need to get involved in that. And then, okay, so also after you get the job and you accept it and you look over your contract and you sign, what's going to happen is a waterfall of things that you're going to have to do within the next 2 weeks, okay? So they're going to want lab work to prove titers to any sort of immunizations that you have, but some hospitals want titers for those immunizations to make sure that you're still immune to them. And then some hospitals want a TB test. They want you to get fit tested for an N95 mask. They are going to want your firstborn. There's going to be a drug test involved. They want you to fill out a bunch of health streams. Does anybody know what health streams are? I'm sure we all do. Some hospitals call them something different other than health streams, but continuing education learning, online learning, each hospital's different, but my very first assignment, I had 22.5 hours of online learning, education things to do for that hospital. That is an HCA facility, by the way. HCA facilities are very thorough with who works for them. So if you ever hear the hospital that's calling you is an HCA facility, get ready. You are about to have 22.5 hours of online learning, and that might include the charting system. They use Meditech still. It's the oldest, most daunting, most frustrating charting system you're ever going to chart in. And they use it in all of their facilities because it's expensive to go with a newer charting system. At the cost of your nurses who are pulling their hair out, HCA. Anyway, HCA is actually a really nice facility to work for. It's just the charting system that's like horrible. That being said, just be prepared after you've filled out a bunch of paperwork for your application process, and then you had to go do like your drug screen, and you had to go do your TB test and your blood test and all the stuff, and you have to get a physical, and you have to fill out other forms. I can't even remember. There's so many forms. And you need to like submit social security card, documentation of ACLS, BLS, depending on what the hospital wants, PALS, things like that. After all of that, then you finally get to start at your facility. Somebody will call you from your facility and it'll be day one. I am going to stop my video there because I have so much to say about day one. Visit me in my next video because I'm going to talk about day one to the extreme, to the max, the good, the bad, the ugly, you name it. I'm going to talk about it. And if I don't, I want you guys to ask me to talk about it because I think this is such a great community. Travel nursing is awesome, but it can also be exhausting. And I just want you guys to be prepared. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching this very hopefully informative video on what to expect when you want to be a travel nurse. See you guys later.